In the twilight of his existence, Jesus would have revealed something so impressive that it would shake the foundations of the Christian faith. But what if this revelation was a closely guarded secret? The Vatican, one of the most powerful institutions in the world, has faced criticism for its opacity and control over sacred texts. Now the question arises, what really happened in the last days of Christ? Apocryphal documents and forgotten accounts suggest that crucial information was systematically excised from the official narrative. Imagine knowledge so transformative that it could redefine spirituality and understanding of God. What could be so threatening that it would require absolute silence? History reveals that over the centuries, many have tried to expose these hidden truths but have been silenced. How has the Church dealt with these dissenting voices? And what could they teach us about the true message of Jesus? Get ready to dive into a labyrinth of mysteries, doubts, and revelations. Embark on this journey and discover whether the greatest truth in Christian history has really been hidden. The answer could change everything you think about faith and power. In the last days of his life, Jesus would have made a series of statements that raise many questions. These claims, which some regard as his last revelation, suggest that he shared deep and meaningful teachings with his disciples. Many people wonder what the true nature of these revelations might have been. Could he have spoken about topics that were not recorded in the canonical Gospels? This doubt generates great interest and much speculation. Interpretations of Jesus' last words vary. For some theologians, these revelations address fundamental questions about spirituality and the relationship between human beings and God. Others believe they could have touched on more controversial aspects which do not fit into the Church's official narrative. This instigates reflection on what was actually said and what may have been omitted over time. Furthermore, the way these revelations were transmitted and preserved is a crucial point. Oral tradition and the writing of the Gospels may have influenced the way Jesus' teachings were interpreted. Therefore, the image we have of him may not be complete. There is a call to investigate further what was left out, as this could change the perception that many have about his message. The issue of authenticity is also relevant. How can we know if these revelations are true? Research and critical analysis of ancient texts can offer some answers, but they also raise new questions. This leads us to explore not only the content of the revelations, but also the context in which they were made. Jesus' last revelation is a topic that continues to be debated. Its implications can be vast, influencing the way people understand the Christian faith and the teachings that derive from it. Thus, this analysis is not only a search for knowledge, but also a search for truth that can resonate in contemporary spirituality. Apocryphal texts are a fascinating part of the history of Christianity. They include writings that have not been considered canonical by the Church, but which offer an alternative view of the teachings of Jesus and the early Christians. These documents, often disregarded, can contain valuable information that diverges from traditional narratives. This raises the question, why did the Church choose to exclude them? Many of these texts, such as the Gospel of Thomas, present a different view of the life and teachings of Jesus. They often emphasize a more mystical or Gnostic approach, which may not have been well received by the ecclesiastical authorities of the time. The exclusion of these writings may have been a way to protect the unity of the faith and avoid interpretations that could divide the Christian community. The way the Church has treated these texts throughout history is equally intriguing. At some times there was an active effort to destroy or discredit these writings. This raises questions about the transparency of the Church and its motivations. What was at stake? The preservation of a dogma, control over the interpretation of faith, or something else? Furthermore, the rediscovery of some of these texts, especially in the 20th century, has brought new perspectives to the study of Christianity. The analysis of these documents can help to better understand the different schools of thought that existed in the first centuries of the Christian era. This challenges the idea that the Christian narrative is monolithic and unchanging. Exploring apocryphal texts invites us to reflect on the very nature of faith and spirituality. If these documents contain truths that have been silenced, it could open space for a broader dialogue about what it means to be a Christian today. The quest to understand these texts is therefore a quest for a deeper and more inclusive understanding of Jesus' message. The process that led to the selection of the texts that we know today as the Bible was complex and full of debates. During the first centuries of Christianity, many communities had their own texts and teachings. The Vatican, as the center of the Catholic Church, played a crucial role in defining what would be considered canonical. This choice was not just a matter of faith, but also involved political issues that influenced which books were accepted and which were rejected. Some texts that are today considered apocryphal contained ideas and teachings that could challenge the authority of the Church. For example, Gospels that presented a more direct and less hierarchical view of Jesus and his teachings were excluded. Thus, the Vatican ended up shaping the Christian narrative by selecting texts that aligned with a more centralized view of the faith, reinforcing its control over the doctrine. Decisions about which texts would be included in the canon were also influenced by historical and cultural contexts. In some eras, the unity of the Church was seen as essential to confront heresies and divisions. Therefore, the choice of texts was not only a theological issue, but also a strategy to maintain cohesion among the faithful. This raises questions about the extent to which political motivations interfered with religious practices. It is important to mention that this selection process was not quick. It spanned centuries and involved councils and heated debates among church leaders. Issues of power and influence were often at play, and this directly impacted how the Christian message was shared. The idea that the Bible is a divinely inspired document can be questioned when looking at how these texts were chosen and excluded. The role of the Vatican in the formation of the canon leads us to reflect on the nature of religious authority. The selection of texts not only shaped Christian doctrine, but also the way believers relate to their faith. This story of choices and exclusions still reverberates in contemporary debates about the interpretation and relevance of Christian teachings. The manipulation of the Christian narrative was a practice that extended throughout the history of the Catholic Church. Since the first centuries, the Church has sought to establish a version of history that guarantees its authority. This involved censoring texts and ideas that could destabilize his position. Through different strategies, the Christian narrative was shaped to meet the interests of the moment, often to the detriment of a more pluralistic vision. A clear example of this manipulation can be found in the way certain apocryphal Gospels were treated. Many of these scriptures offered perspectives that diverged from the four canonical Gospels, presenting, for example, a more egalitarian view of the role of women. The exclusion of these texts was not just a matter of choice, but a deliberate attempt to control the narrative reaching the faithful. Furthermore, the Church used indoctrination as a tool to shape believers' perceptions of the faith. From teaching in schools to sermons in churches, the emphasis was on a specific interpretation of canonical texts. This approach aimed to create a solid foundation of beliefs that supported the Church's authority and discouraged questioning. The result was a narrative that favored the institution to the detriment of diversity of interpretations. Censorship also played an important role in manipulating the Christian narrative. Books and ideas that challenged church doctrines were often banned or condemned. This not only limited access to different perspectives, but also created an environment of fear and conformity among the faithful. The idea that the truth was restricted to the Church's interpretation reinforced its position of control. This manipulation of the Christian narrative continues to be a relevant topic today. Questions about the interpretation of Jesus' teachings and the inclusion of different voices are still up for debate. With this, it is clear that the history of the Church and its relationship with the Christian narrative is marked by a continuous effort for control and legitimacy, which still echoes in contemporary discussions about faith and spirituality. The revelation that has been supposedly silenced throughout the history of Christianity could have a profound impact on the way we understand contemporary Christian doctrine. If some truths or teachings of Jesus were in fact hidden, it raises questions about the authenticity of what is taught in churches today. Many people wonder if the faith they practice is complete or if it is missing something essential that could transform their lives and their understanding of God. Furthermore, this revelation could not only alter the perception of Jesus' teachings, but also influence Christian morality. For example, ethical concepts that might have been addressed in non-canonical texts may offer a more inclusive or progressive view on current issues such as social justice and human rights. The omission of these ideas could result in a more rigid and conservative morality, which does not respond to the needs and challenges of the modern world. Religious practices may also be affected. If new revelations are accepted, rituals and traditions that are considered sacred may be questioned. This could lead to a re-evaluation of how Christian communities gather, worship, and relate to God. The introduction of new teachings could provoke a wave of spiritual renewal, or, on the other hand, cause division among the faithful. There is still the possibility that the hidden revelation will bring to light a new understanding of the figure of Jesus. This could lead to the rediscovery of its original message, which may, in many ways, have been distorted or simplified over the centuries. The way people relate to Jesus could change drastically, promoting a more personal and less institutionalized faith. The impact of the silenced revelation could generate a movement to search for truth within Christian communities. The desire to explore the roots of faith can lead many to question not only what they have been taught, but also the history of the Church and its decisions. This search can result in a more authentic and engaged spirituality, which seeks to understand and live the teachings of Jesus more completely. Critics and historians have a variety of opinions about occultation theories related to the figure of Jesus and the teachings that may have been silenced. Some scholars argue that the Catholic Church, over the centuries, made a deliberate selection of texts that were included in the Bible, which may indicate a specific agenda. This manipulation is seen by many as an attempt to control the Christian narrative and maintain power over the faithful. On the other hand, there are those who argue that the exclusion of certain texts was due to legitimate reasons, such as lack of authenticity or doubt about the origin of these writings. This view suggests that the selection of the biblical canon was a careful process, although many critics still consider it a form of censorship. The discussion intensifies as more apocryphal texts are discovered, raising questions about how truth has been shaped throughout history. Historians also point out that the Church's reaction to new discoveries and theories is often defensive. When faced with evidence that challenges traditional narratives, Church representatives tend to reaffirm dogma and discredit alternative sources. This creates a cycle of tension between the search for knowledge and the protection of established beliefs, which can alienate believers who seek a broader understanding of their faith. Furthermore, analysis of the opinions of contemporary theologians reveals a divided field. Some see the possibility of new interpretations as an opportunity to renew faith, while others fear it could lead to the fragmentation of Christianity. This polarization shows that the discussion about the concealment of revelations is not just academic, but has direct repercussions on the spiritual lives of millions of people. The repercussions for modern Christian faith are significant. If the idea that Jesus' fundamental teachings were hidden gains traction, it could encourage a movement to reevaluate religious practices and moral values. This search for a deeper understanding of Jesus' message can inspire a new spiritual awakening, but it can also provoke crises of faith among those who feel betrayed by the history of the Church. And so we come to the end of this intriguing journey. But before we close, let's reflect. What if Jesus really shared something that could shake the foundations of faith? What else could be hidden in the shadows of history? Apocryphal texts, which many consider heretical, offer clues that can lead us to surprising answers. What secrets does the Vatican still keep? Imagine if, instead of a savior, we found a revolutionary who challenged the power structures of his time. What would this mean for our understanding of faith and spirituality? What if the true message of Jesus is more liberating than the dogmas we follow? If you like this theme and want to explore more hidden mysteries, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Don't miss the next investigations that uncover what many prefer to leave forgotten. Share your opinion in the comments. Do you believe that the truth about Jesus has been silenced? What else could be lurking in the forgotten pages of history? Your voice matters, and we're here to find out together. Stay tuned, because the truth may be more surprising than we imagine.